Welcome into the X106 Sports Podcast. Moore and Jonathan Bynum and myself, Devin Albertson, talk about the NBA. What can be done to improve the NBA All-Star Game, and also the guys talk and give their thoughts about the DeMarcus Cousins trade. So, to start off the podcast, the All-Star Game. Can anything be done to fix it, make it better?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if there really is anything, but I think they could take something out of the NHL playbook and maybe do like a little 3-on-3 tournament, because I think that's something different. I mean, it's just, unless you really love watching a bunch of athletes go out there and play no defense and watch them dunk and do all that, then that's what you're going to do when you're going to watch. But, I mean, I don't know if you can really fix something like that.
Well, the thing about the All-Star Weekend and stuff like that is, like, they're out there to have fun. They're out there to have a good time, and just a bunch of very, very, very talented players come together and just play a quick pickup game.
Yeah, that's what I saw. I was like, I tuned into it. I'm like, you know what? I don't expect any defense whatsoever. I didn't see any. I expect guys like LeBron and Antetokounmpo and all the guys like that just go up there and just slam the ball as hard as they can through the hoop. And Curry or somebody shoot deep three. I actually saw LeBron shoot a deep three from like half court. I just saw the guys just kind of go out there. But you still kind of want to see a little bit of competitiveness, because I know like dunks are cool, but they're a lot cooler if like someone's trying to stop you from dunking, because you're actually like showing effort. Like, I don't know, it just looks different whenever someone's actually like trying to stay in front of you and you dunk over them than just an open dunk. I don't know, two-handed slash. I don't know.
What else I think could improve, I guess, on it was just kind of have more incentives. Maybe not necessarily do what Major League Baseball did and decide who gets home court or home field advantage.
Like right now, it's I think $50,000 for each player to the winning team and $25,000 to the losing team. That's nothing for NBA players. That's zero. It's like, okay, give me $5. I mean, that's pretty much what it is to them.
Yeah, and I think just finding some way to make the players want to play more. And I think I can remember what the NFL did a few years ago, but they were hitting each other out there. I remember Derek Johnson smoked Jamal Charles, and I thought Andy Reid had a heart attack.
Chiefs fans were like, no,
said, no, man, we don't want that. But I don't know what else you could really do. And, I mean, if you really expect them to go all out and have a great, tight game, you're watching the wrong game, because, I mean, obviously it's for the players. It's not for us, really.
And
it's just for the players.
Steve Kerr was saying something about it along the lines of that. Like, there's no competition. There's absolutely no defense. There needs to be some kind of, like you said, like some sort of incentive to get the players to like actually compete instead of just sagging off on defense and letting the other opposing team do whatever they want on offense.
Yeah, there's not much of intrigue going in the game. Like, oh, the West going to win. It's more like, is the West going to score 200 points? I mean, it's going to happen like next year. So
close.
They were close the last couple of years, but the most combined points for an All-Star game in the past 2 years. This year's broke last year's record. And we had two guys break the scoring record in Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis, 52 and 44 points. So Davis won the MVP. It was kind of cool for him in front of his hometown fans there in New Orleans, so that was kind of fun.
Did you notice Steve Kerr trying to get some plays out of James Harden? He was sitting there on the bench going, so, wait, you know that play that you guys run, so who do you look for to get on that? Who do you look for? Who's looking for the screen here? I was like, man, Steve Kerr's just
Western Conference Finals.
He's trying too hard.
Yeah, no, he's just trying to get these plays in, and I don't blame him. Take advantage you can get. That's funny.
Another thing I saw was when James Harden tried to throw a lob to AD, but it went in.
Yeah. Well, I think also one of the funniest moments of the night was it wasn't the dunk itself, the Kevin Durant to Russell Westbrook. It was afterward when everybody was all cheering and trying to make it as awkward as possible. I thought that was really funny.
That was funny there. A little give and go between Westbrook and Durant. Back to good old time's sake there for the old Thunder teammates. But that was just kind of interesting. And I thought it was funny whenever Antetokounmpo got that steal, and then Curry just laid down. He's like, I'm not getting this poster. And then like a couple plays later, they missed a shot, and then he put Curry on a poster. And DeAndre's face after that was hilarious. He's like, oh, my God, no. Poor Curry, because he's down there trying to get a rebound. 6'1", and he's 6'3", I think, or whatever Curry's height. Then 6'11", Antetokounmpo just goes up and just slams it on him. And Curry's like, oh, no. This is not what I wanted to happen right now.
Yeah, I don't blame him for trying to lay down, because I think it's brave and noble for you to try and go block a dunk like that, But then, nowadays on social media, you'll be put on blast for, the next 4 days. So
not everybody wants to be Anderson
laid down.
Varejao and just be the guy who gets in every poster, or Brandon Knight.
Nobody wants to be Anderson Varejao to begin with. But.
No, they do not. But that was just kind of a funny moment for Curry, just to kind of have fun with the fans. Like, I'm just going to lay down here. I'm not even going to try to be in the poster at all, just below the scenes. So, and then he got dunked on later, so it was funny. So that's what happened in the All-Star game. Not a whole lot to talk about there because the Westbrook Durant stuff wasn't as big as everybody blew out, which we all kind of knew that was going to happen in the first place. They were kind of just going to play it off and give each other some points just to everybody just shut up about it. So, but the big news, what happened after the game, Boogie Cousins was there in New Orleans, didn't play a whole lot in the All-Star game, only a couple minutes. But now he's going to stay in New Orleans. I saw in the press conference afterwards, his agent was telling him that he might get traded or whatever. I don't think it broke until after that, but he's like, hey, you might be staying here. It's like, what do you think of the All-Star game? He's like, I love New Orleans. Like,
yeah, really.
Just kind of like,
well,
he
that's
knew,
good because you're staying.
because he's staying there in New Orleans as a trade that sent Boogie Cousins from Sacramento to New Orleans. Also, Omar Cassie's going with him for Buddy Hield, Tyreek Evans, Lansing Galloway, a 2017 first-round pick and a 2017 second-round pick to the Kings. So, personally, I like the trade a lot for the Pelicans. You got to get someone there next to Anthony Davis who can do something on offense and not just nobody. So I thought it's going to be a good move for them to try to get into the playoffs and try to get the team experience for the playoffs. But, Max, you had a different opinion. You liked the other part of this, so I thought Sacramento got robbed here, but you like Sacramento's part of the trade.
Well, the reason why I say I like it is because they do get their draft picks, and as you said even before we started, they're going to lose one. But I think the way that Vlade Divac was talking about it was they want to build a different culture around Sacramento, which is what I understand. I get that because, I mean, as talented as DeMarcus Cousins is, he also has a lot of issues with him mentally and just the way he acts. I mean, nobody wants to be with a guy, especially when there's only 5 players on the floor and you have one guy that's a head case. It's hard. It's really hard to play with a guy like that. And it's like even on Northwest, I asked Coach McCollum, like, what does culture mean? What is this idea of culture wins? He said, we just want guys that want to win and play to win and that are going to check their ego at the door. And that's something that DeMarcus Cousins can't really do. And, that's what they want in Sacramento. And you obviously got to build through the draft, and it's going to be a while before you can catch up to the Warriors or the rest of the league. But, you got to build through the draft, and it's a process that you got to take.
Can we look aside from egos for a second and think of all the talent that the Pelicans just received and the lack thereof that the Kings just received too? Because you got Buddy Hield. I thought he was going to be a great player. He's averaging 8.6 points a game, shooting 39% from the field, 36 from 3. Decent stats, but he's not like doing like spectacular like Devin Booker or Joel Embiid. So and people were thinking he was going to be a spectacular rookie and he was going to be like a Rookie of the Year candidate, but it's just not happening. But I do think he does have the potential to become something better. Maybe this was the move. And the only thing that happened, the only thing bad for this trade for the Pelicans is their lack of depth now.
At guard.
Yeah,
right.
They don't have a lot of guards.
They're going to try to address that. I think they're going to try to trade Terrence Jones. Like, hey, we have enough bigs now. We have 2 really good bigs. We don't need you anymore. They're going to try to trade him to get a decent guard. And the whole thing, they kind of made this, like, okay, if you're going to make the trade, that's fine. But the Kings GM, Vlade Divac, made one of the dumbest comments I've ever heard. Like, the next day, he's like, oh, yeah, we had a better deal 2 days ago in place, and we just didn't take it. Now we're taking this one. It's like, why would you tell us that? I get if it actually happened, but why would you tell the media that and just look stupid?
Well, it's a little bit too late for that now.
Yeah.
Like, this just looks dumb. You're like, oh, yeah, we had a better trade deal 2 days ago. We didn't take it. We're taking this one, though. It's like, personally, I like Buddy Hield in college, but just he didn't transition well to the NBA to be a star player. He might be a good role player for somebody who can shoot threes. I mean, he's going to be a specialist guy, but they like him a lot. They think he has Steph Curry potential, but I think it's just insane to even like mention Steph Curry in the same sentence as Buddy Hield right now. So that's just me. I don't know. He can't dribble.
I think they might take a page out of baseball's playbook. They people sometimes get trades and they don't even stay on the team for that much longer, and they might even use them as trade bait. So obviously you might want to expect that those guys that are going to Sacramento are going to be there for at least the next few years. But also, you could use them as trade bait to get even more players, more draft picks, and just say, you know what, we're obviously not going to make the playoffs this year. and then just build through the draft, which is what Golden State did, and even years ago, getting Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and letting that process take out and go through, Harrison Barnes. That was the way they built that team, and obviously they get Kevin Durant and more free agents to come in after they lost some people. But
I think it's a great theory, but I don't know if Sacramento's going to be able to carry through that just with their history of stuff where old Big 12 players go to die. If you think like Ben McLemore, Buddy Hield now, I mean, just what happens with those guys. They go to Sacramento, and it's like, oh, these are going to be dominating the league, and they don't do anything. The Kings also waived Matt Barnes as part of the trade to clear cap or whatever. So Matt Barnes is gone. I think he's dumb too.
Matt Barnes is not as effective as he was.
Well,
when
and
was he
also
ever
10 years ago.
effective?
Like, he was decent on the Lakers. He's not.
back in Golden State in about 2007, the We Believe team, he was a nice role player. But
Yeah, I remember that.
Such a tool. He's such a tool. I
Well,
hate
yeah,
Matt Barnes.
I mean, that goes back to the culture thing. You want a guy like DeMarcus Cousins and Matt Barnes on the same team?
well, they used to
No.
have him and Rondo all on the same team.
And Rondo's
Exactly.
a terrible person, too. so.
You're changing the culture in that building.
It was probably for the best for both teams. Sacramento got rid of Cousins. Cousins away from Sacramento. It's kind of a mutual thing. Like, hey, this just isn't working out between the two of us. We had to get rid of you. I think they could have got more back for DeMarcus Cousins, but they just didn't. They wanted to get rid of him. I think it was a good time at the All-Star break. He's in New Orleans. Might as well keep him there. Don't come back to Sacramento. So, I mean, Cousins, he's averaging 28 and 11 this year right now. He already has 17 technical fouls. So, for every technical he gets the rest of the year, he'll be suspended for another game the rest of the way. So,
And the crazy thing is, AD and him have identical stats. AD's averaging, 27, 11, and even 2.5 blocks.
yeah, it's kind of crazy what those two are going to be able to do together. And I know I was listening to a couple other sports shows this morning, and they were saying, is this the best Twin Towers duo, which you haven't seen them play together yet, but potentially it could be, because there's not a lot of bigs who played together in their primes. Because you think David Robinson and Duncan, but Robinson was old, Duncan was coming into the league. They won a championship together, but they weren't the big reasons why, because they were so dominant. So it's interesting to see if these two can actually play together. They're old Kentucky guys. So I already knew Calipari question, are you going to go to New Orleans? Like, no, he's not going to New Orleans. He has, first of all, his son won't be able to play for Kentucky anymore if he goes to New Orleans, so that's not going to happen. So, I don't know.
Well, even when you can, like, they talked about Tim Duncan and
Robinson.
David Robinson, those two were different players. Tim Duncan was a damn near 7 foot power forward, true power forward, and David Robinson was a true center.
These are both like flex
These two
guys.
are fantastic athletes that could, I don't know whether Boogie Cousins could play the 1, the 2, or the 3, but Anthony Davis can play all 5 positions
He
pretty
was a
much.
guard in high school, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he can play all 5 positions, so I think that's where it's going to be really interesting to see is where they fit, because we obviously know that Anthony Davis can play all 5 positions, and I want to see how he plays with that.
If you go back and look at Boogie's highlights like throughout the season, he's actually very athletic, coordinated. He knows what he's doing with the ball when he's like dribbling. Like, I've never seen a center run ISO plays like Boogie. But he's doing it, and he's doing it very, very well, and that's scary. And then you put 2 big men that could do the same thing on the same team, 2 big men that could dribble, stretch the floor, pass, be dominant down low. That's frightening.
One thing I want to see with here is how these two guys can play together in a league that's going 2 3-point shooters and speeding it up when they're going to try to slow it down, do other stuff. It'll be an interesting matchup. I know they're 2.5 games out of the playoffs in the West. Right now they trail actually for the 8 spots, the Nuggets and the Kings, Trailblazers, and then the Pelicans. They're out in the West, so be interesting to see what New Orleans can do here, to see if they get into the 8th seed and how they'll match up with Golden State. 'Cause that's going to be a weird matchup where you have 2 bigs in New Orleans versus no bigs pretty much in Golden State, unless you want to count Zaza and the other guy, JaVale McGee.
Yeah.
So that'd be interesting to see how those match up. And also, Portland has nobody who can cover anybody on the perimeter. So it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to go and which style of pace is going to rule there. I don't think it's going to go any more than 5 games maybe, but Davis and Boogie might get their first playoff wins.
I think one thing that us as fans and journalists and whatnot, I think you definitely have to give these 2 players some time to figure out the way they're going to play. And,
Definitely.
DeMarcus Cousins may not even be on the team next year. In his contract this year?
No, he can sign an extension at the end of this year. He's on contract for next year.
Right.
So he has at least a year and a half or so with New Orleans.
Even after that, he's not even guaranteed to be on the Pelicans. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously the Kings weren't willing to pay him that much for.
He wanted to stay in. The Kings are like, I don't know if we want you.
We don't know if we want you for $200 million over 6 years.
And the thing with Boogie, you bring that up, $200 million. Now his most he can make is $180 or so. So he could lost at least almost $30 million or so in this trade, at least $20 million. I mean, That's a lot of money.
$30 million, though. Just $30 million.
Yeah, just $30 million for him. I mean, he's losing that much just in the single trade. So I know New Orleans can still offer him the most money of anybody, still have his rights, but it won't be as much as Sacramento could have offered him if they would have kept him. So it's a big money loss for Boogie if you're looking at the dollars.
Have you ever seen anything close to like $200 million? I don't
think I've seen
anything close to $1 million, or at least maybe even close to $1,000, like a couple
$1,000. Like, ooh,
I've seen
it's
that.
$1,000.
Yeah, you're just looking at there like, wow, that's a lot of money. These guys are like, man, that's just my weekend in Vegas.
Yeah, I got $50,000.
That's
I mean,
not
Boogie's
even,
like, I got
$50
$50G just to win the All-Star game. I didn't play 2 minutes, so
I've been to Vegas, man, and those meals aren't cheap. I mean, those are a couple $100 per person, and that's a lot of money, and I don't blame them for trying to get it, but sometimes if you want to win, you might want to take a little bit less money if you want to win.
That is also true, and I think Boogie, once he starts playing with Anthony Davis and like, hey, I've never played with a player this good, and vice versa with Anthony Davis, they might try to work something out and try to adjust to their games a little bit. Kentucky guys, you never know. Maybe they'll get a player from the Wizards to come over in free agency to New Orleans and just play a whole Wildcat reunion down there in NOLA.
Yeah, I think a snowball has a better chance than to get back there.
You never know.
The only thing that New Orleans needs is a point guard to throw them lobs.
As I said in the free podcast thing we had together, was maybe the Bulls just need to get rid of Rondo so we can go down there and just have fun with Boogie and Davis and just rack up 15 assists a game just throwing to those two.
Well, it'll be curious because you talk about Jimmy Butler. Or I'm sorry, you said Rajon Rondo, but Jimmy Butler, he's becoming kind of a trade target. I'm curious to see where he might end up, or if he even stays.
Boston, maybe. I mean, the thing with Boston, I was kind of curious with them. They were kind of interested in Boogie, but they wouldn't get rid of Terry Rozier. They wouldn't remove him. Like, I don't know what's so great about Terry Rozier. I know Boston's like in love with their prospects, so I don't know what they'll give up for Butler or anything, but be interesting to see what they do if they try to get Butler, because if they get Butler, they're definitely the clear number 2 in the East and not challenge Cleveland.
If you can get Jimmy Butler and Isaiah Thomas on the same team, watching them run the backcourt, that's fun stuff. I would rather watch them. I mean, granted, I've seen Steph and Clay play a lot, but I'd rather want to see what they got.
They'll do more things. They won't just shoot threes. They'll be able to attack the bucket a little more. Because Klay Thompson, he's a great player, but he's not a guy who's going to be able to take a lot of people off the dribble and stuff that. Usually it's pump fake and then he goes because they respect his 3-ball so much. And Curry, more or less, he's more handles than Klay does and will get to the bucket a little bit more. But if you look at Isaiah and Jimmy, they're attacking the bucket all the time, and Isaiah right now is the best fourth-quarter player in the league. So they would be an interesting combo together. And, of course, I like Washington watching Beal and Wall play. There's a lot of good guard combos in the league right now if you look. You look at Cleveland, LeBron, and Kyrie. You look at Milwaukee whenever Parker was healthy with him and the Greek Freak. I mean, you looked in Portland where they're not very good, but at least they have C.J. McCollum and Damian Lillard to put on a show for. So there's not a lot of teams that you look at like, well, a team's bad, but you know what? You can still watch Devin Booker play in Phoenix. You can still watch Wiggins and Cat play in Minnesota even though they're bad. So that's a little tangent, but I just hate when the old guys are like, the NBA sucks now. Well, no, it doesn't. Not really, because even the bad teams have players you can have fun watching. So let's take a night off. It's still fun.
And it doesn't make sense how some of these teams are bad and they have really good players. Like, this team should be really good on paper, but it doesn't make sense. Like Minnesota.
I think Minnesota's probably just young. They're just trying to figure it out in the league right now. Levine's hurt. That's not helping anything. Ricky Rubio's on the team.
No doubt. I mean,
they need to get rid of Ricky Rubio.
I'll just be sure to be watching Adrian Wojnarowski's Twitter handle for the next few days.
Woj is great. He's the best guy to follow in the NBA if you want news.
For sure. He's the Adam Schefter of the NBA.
Oh, yeah. If not better. I don't know. Adam's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, Woj puts out some stuff, and people sometimes they go, oh, this would never happen, and all of a sudden sources close to me say that this is going to happen, and people say no, and then bam, happened, and he goes, well, all right.
I don't know why people doubt Woj anymore. I don't understand why you would. I mean, he's pretty great. That's me for the NBA talk, but we'll come back here after a quick break. There's been a trade involving 2 Florida teams in the NBA in the NFL that we're going to talk about here next on the X106 Podcast. And here we go for the NFL part of the podcast. Devin Albertson, Moore and Jonathan Bynum here to talk a trade between the Miami Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Actually, 2 trades, as Miami agreed to acquire Julius Thomas, a tight end from Jacksonville, for a 2017 7th-round pick, and Jacksonville was going to acquire Brandon Albert, a left tackle, for a 2018 7th-round pick. So they're pretty much just swapping 7th-round picks in different years for Albert and Thomas here between both these Florida teams down in the NFL. watching Julius Thomas. I watched Julius Thomas a lot whenever he played for the Broncos. He was really good with Peyton Manning. Then he kind of fell off a cliff in Jacksonville. And we saw a lot of Brandon Albert when he was with the Chiefs here in Kansas, outside of Kansas City. And I don't know, this trade, as Max kind of brought up in the break, I don't know how big of a need each team had at their respective positions.
Well, I think when you look at the Dolphins, I think them picking up Julius Thomas is good because it adds another playmaker to the team, and it helps out Tannehill quite a bit. And, if he doesn't get healthy again, Matt Moore. But I think getting a good player like him and having Adam Gase there certainly helps because he was Julius Thomas's coach back when he was in Denver, and you saw how great that was.
Yeah, he was really good then.
As Chiefs fans, we all saw how much that killed the Chiefs.
In a 2-year stretch, he had 108 catches for 1,277 yards and 24 touchdowns between 13 and 14 with Adam Gase as a coordinator.
Well, and the fact that he wasn't the only playmaker on that offensive, weaponry.
You had Demaryius Thomas, and that's when they had Wes Welker, so they had a lot of good players out there in the offense.
A lot of good players, and he was still getting 1,000 yards. That's pretty impressive.
In 2-year stretch. He was really good. He was like their fourth option on offense. He was still a big producer, especially in the red zone for them. And as you said, Brandon Albert went to Jacksonville. Second before I go there, Julius Thomas. The Dolphins had the second least productive tight end group last year in the league. The Jets were the worst. They had 173 yards of their tight end last year, which is pathetic. Dolphins 551, the Raiders 580. So one of the worst teams at tight end last year were the Dolphins, and they got a good one there in Julius Thomas. Made a couple of Pro Bowls there when he was in Denver. Really fell off a cliff in Jacksonville. I don't know, him and Bortles never got it off, and it's Bortles, so you never know how good Julius Thomas still is. But we'll move on to the second part of the trade. Brandon Albert, he's 32 years old, but he's still pretty quality when he's healthy. But he missed 13 games the past 3 years due to injuries. So his problem has been injuries. Back even with the Chiefs, is with injuries. But he's still a decent left tackle for Jacksonville to protect Bortles or whoever quarterback can be their blind side.
Yeah, I think having him in Jacksonville will be good. I think as long as you said, as long as him staying healthy is going to happen. As he stays healthy, then they have a good shot in being better because we saw last year they were good. They had some good players.
Whenever Miami's line was healthy, they were really good with Ajayi and Tannehill. They were healthy. They were really good offensive line, and they just broke down with him and Pouncey.
Yeah, but even like in Jacksonville, adding to their talent, having an offensive line that's really solid, then we saw what happens when your offensive line's solid with the Cowboys. Exactly. Granted, Ezekiel Elliott's a fantastic running back, and Dak Prescott did so well. But if you have a good core offensive line and you have playmakers on the outside, there's no reason why you can't be successful in the NFL.
And if you look at Jacksonville, they have Alec Hearns and Allen Robinson, two really good receivers that don't have time to get the ball to them on the outside. Something interesting to see how they try to do that with Brandon Albert, their left tackle, and kind of knowing they need a left tackle because their last draft to pick a tackle was when they had Luke Jokel, the second pick, and he was worse than Eric Fisher, the first pick. So that's just how bad Jokel is there for Jacksonville.
Yeah, I remember people saying, why would you take Luke, or why wouldn't you take Luke Jokel? And I said, to be honest, I think they're probably the same. They looked like the same player out of the draft. Yeah. One of them just went to Central Michigan or Eastern Michigan, whatever. He went to Central Michigan,
Chippewas,
and then Luke Jokel went to Texas A&M and got to block for Johnny Manziel and get more playing time or more air time.
What was Manziel's best highlights when he was scrambling around after getting chased by defensive linemen? So.
Yeah, maybe they should have figured that out a little bit sooner. But, one thing, and speaking of trades, I keep seeing this, and obviously we're here in Maryville, which is close to Kansas City. Are the Chiefs going to trade for Tony Romo? I don't want it to happen. I don't think it would happen.
It's not necessarily a good idea at all.
But it keeps popping up.
Tony Romo is actually a very solid quarterback. It's just like, and every time, and you saw in the past season, every time he was out, the Cowboys lost, and then when he was in, the Cowboys won. So they still ended up 7-9 like 2 seasons ago before Dak. And I don't know. He's just too fragile. It's something to worry about. I'd rather just keep Alex Smith.
That's my thing. He's just too fragile. Like if it was a healthy Tony Romo, then yes, I'd be all aboard of it. But I just can't go through that when my quarterback's injured and we have to go turn to Tyler Bray for a backup situation. I just can't do that and just dump on Alex Smith. I think Alex Smith can win a couple playoff games. I don't think he played bad. No, people are like, he played bad in the playoff game. He really didn't play bad. His receivers drop passes. The best tight end in the league, Travis Kelce, dropped up 2-minute passes, lost his cool. They just didn't play well as a team. It wasn't really Smith's fault. I mean, he misses open people downfield. Well, yeah, he's also getting chased around the pockets. Maybe we improve the offensive line before we get rid of our quarterback. I don't know. I'm just get frustrated with all this. People are like, well, Alex Smith is trash. No, not really. He's a competent quarterback who can win a couple playoffs games for you if you put the right pieces around him and make plays around him. He can put you in a situation to make plays. You got to make them. So
if you're the Chiefs, do you think about getting a free agent quarterback, or do you really try and go for a quarterback in the draft?
Well, I keep hoping all these NFL scouts are like, Deshaun Watson's a second-round player. I'm like, yeah, you keep telling me that, so he drops in the draft, but he's not going to drop. I'm just hoping he falls and just falls so far fast. If the Chiefs don't take him, I'm going to go down to Kansas City, and I will slap John Dorsey. I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah, I really love Deshaun Watson, and they have people saying he's going to fall to, down to the late first round and possibly to the second round. But if you could get Deshaun Watson and have him sit like Aaron Rodgers did, obviously, he sat behind Brett Favre, but if you have him sit behind Alex Smith for a few years and you let Alex Smith just, mentor him. And
even for a year, because I think Alex Smith has one really good year left in him for Alex Smith.
Right.
And I think if you do that, you can let Deshaun Watson learn behind Alex Smith. Alex Smith's a really smart quarterback. He really is. He has a great one-look score. He's just Andy Reid loves his intelligence there, knowing the playbook and everything like that. And teach Deshaun Watson that and how to be a pro. I think Deshaun Watson will learn from that. And a little mentor program, we let him sit for a year and get better. Chiefs will be set up for after that. I think that's a smarter way to go. But I don't know if the Chiefs will actually do that. So it'd be interesting to see what they actually do come whenever the draft is.
Yeah, and they were talking about on Arrowhead Pride about possibly Dalvin Cook if he's available. I don't think the Chiefs need to go running back.
I don't think he'll be there
at least
anyways.
Till the late rounds.
I don't think he'll be there anyways because I see a lot of drafts him going above Leonard Fournette to 8 to Carolina because he's been healthy actually. He's still downhill running back that Carolina would like to use. So I don't know if him or Fournette, but I've seen Christian McCaffrey. That'd be an interesting thing with the Chiefs with his versatility, which I know Andy Reid loves. That'd almost be a better choice for the Chiefs if it comes to it. But I don't know, just kind of interesting because the Chiefs are a weird team because they're really talented at a lot of positions. They don't have a lot of positions of need. So I think it's going to be interesting. They can take a position of luxury if they have to there with a running back or a quarterback of the future, something like that, where they don't have to, unless they want a really good middle linebacker. Probably the only position I really see, middle linebacker, maybe a second corner for the Chiefs. But other than that, they're really pretty set across the board for the Chiefs. They have done a nice job constructing this roster where they don't have major needs going every offseason.
Right. And speaking of draft news, do you think that anyone in the MIAA gets drafted?
Drafted might be Colin Bevins, I think, has the NFL body, but I don't know if people will take the D2 label off him enough to take him in the 5th or 6th round or something like that. I hope he gets drafted. I think he's going to be a really good pro. I think Cass Waddle goes undrafted, but he sticks with the team in the training camp, and people see what he can actually do. I don't know how many other Bearcats. I've seen Matisse, and he's been trying to, but kickers are a little weird, so it's always kind of just to see what they want there.
What about Connor Harris?
Oh, Lindenwood kid, yes. I don't know what they have a draft grade for him, but he's a good player.
Well, he got invited to the Combine, so, that's one step in the right direction.
I remember last time my double player getting drafted invited to the Combine, it was the receiver at Pitt State.
John Brown.
John Brown, he's fast.
Very good.
God, that guy's fast.
Yeah, he's a good athlete. And obviously, people, around here, we always like to, mess with Connor and say, oh, his stats are padded a little bit. If you get one finger on the tackle, then he got an extra tackle. But
he's in Northwest. He'd had a crap ton of tackles with Volstat beside him.
He was recruited to come here. He was supposed to come here. And I remember Coach Wright having a few fun words at the Lindenwood game about him not going to
wrong choice, Connor.
Northwest. But I think it's interesting the way the Division II, how these small school kids get
overlooked almost. Yeah.
Well, not even overlooked, but how they get their name out there, because all it takes is a good combine. I think for Connor Harrison, in order to get drafted, he needs to have a great combine. Mm-hmm. Because, we've all seen it before. Some guy runs a fast 40, he jumps really high and he jumps really far, and oh my gosh, he's the next, big thing. He's going to get drafted.
Exactly.
Even if he doesn't produce in the NFL,
exactly.
he's still get drafted.
People are like, well, we'll take a guy who's a great athlete in Division I over a guy who produces in Division II if he doesn't have the correct measurables they see fit. And that's just a harsh reality of D2 players. Even if you're a better football player, you don't have the measurables, you're not going to get a look just because you're Division II. You didn't play against anybody. I just hate that because a lot of guys who are in Division II could have been Division I. It's just either a freak injury their senior year, or couldn't quite make the ACT or SAT scores, or they get kicked out of college when they're in Division I. So it's interesting to see how they actually take these Division II players who are talented and just hadn't late bloomers or something like that. So it's interesting to see. I know not everybody in Division II is going to go to the pros, just like them in Division I. But there are enough players in Division II who can make the leap. I mean, we saw a guy from Shepherd last year, a receiver coming out this year. He might make it, and Billy Brown, he's a really good – he'd be starting for most Division I schools. He's really good.
And he's a good prospect too. If you're willing to invite him to training camp off a free agent contract, he'd be someone to look at.
Make your world worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly. And even if he just becomes a practice squad guy, you can have him pretend to be – Des Bryant or something.
Exactly. I mean, he's a big-bodied receiver. So there's guys in the D2, if you find them, there's hidden jewels. Even the guy out of Fort Hays, the D lineman, CEO, he's really explosive. I saw a film of him blowing up a certain Northwest lineman. But
yeah, he's a very good player. And I think the fun thing, I don't know if it's going to be online or not, but the MIAA, or maybe it's the Missouri Western Pro Day, which is mainly a bunch of guys from the local area going to do their pro day. I know Cass and Colin are going, and I'm going to meet up with Cass sometime this week and talk to him about it and do a little story for the KNWT. But,
Channel 8 here on campus.
Yeah, campus. 6 o'clock, Bearcat Update. Tune in. Anyway.
I was on that show this week. It was great.
Yeah, I saw it.
I saw a great piece on California kids that you should look out there from Max Moore. So
yeah,
little self-plug here on the student stuff for KNWT, produced by Brett Peters, hosted by Tim Hanna.
Yeah, just fantastic crew. And
Brett.
Yeah, and Brett. But, so, I mean, their combine that they go to, or the pro day, what's interesting is they run the 40-yard dash, and if you don't run a certain time,
you're done already.
Go home.
Yeah.
You go home. There's no point. And they say, well, you immediately don't meet our expectations, so you can go on and head home. So
it's going to be certain measurables.
And I won't quote me on this, but I don't even think Longacre ran fast enough on his pro day.
I think he just barely made. There was a couple guys who just didn't make it. Just barely. I think he was close. Like he was on the edge there.
Right. But I know from talking to the guys that he didn't have a great pro day, but I mean he's just a great football player in general. And
I mean, some guys who just have the instincts to be a football player. They're not overly fast or strong. They just have the instincts. I mean, you can't measure instincts or intangibles there in football players. It makes the draft and the combine so interesting is you find hidden jewels like, hey, this guy doesn't run the best 40 or is the strongest guy, but you know what? He's a good football player. I mean, there's just something you can't measure there with a guy who just produces and knows how to make tackle and that for making big plays.
Tom Brady effect.
I mean, Tom Brady is not a very good athlete at all, but he can make plays. I mean, that's just the thing.
Yes, he can.
He
can. So, yeah, I'm interested to see how those guys do. I think, obviously, playing with those two and seeing how they prepare and how they go and how how I had to try and block them, and it didn't work out most of the time.
Sorry, I had a cousin who went to Missouri Western for some reason, and he's usually a backup guard. They moved him to tackle for the Northwest game because their tackle got hurt, and he had to guard. He had to block him. He didn't block him very well. He's like, those guys were good.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to do it in practice when they're not even, going full game speed, adrenaline. But I couldn't imagine doing it during the game.
And playing for Missouri Western is even worse. I mean,
yeah, you already have.
I'm pretty much already disowned him in the family, so it's fine.
You already have a lot of bad. You already have a bad mojo going on just being on that campus. Let alone being not that great of a player.
So it'll be interesting to see when those come out. We never see mock drafts all the way to the 7th round anyway, so you can't tell who's going to go what grade. Every team has a different grade for every player, so it's always hard to see what's going to go on there, but we'll be keeping our eye on that come draft day if anybody gets drafted. And there's a couple Bearcats have been in the pros with the Dixon twins, Longacre, Toffelson, other guys. Travis Manning almost made the league. He was close. Even Bryce Inyard's in arena football right now up in Iowa trying to make his way back to the league. So there's a lot of avenues to try to get to the league, and best of luck to Bevins and White. I've seen them play all 4 years here at Northwest, either being a student and here for X106 or growing up in the area, seeing those guys play and just being really good. It's always interesting to see those guys trying to make the next level, and always the only reason I like the Rams is because they have Matt Longacre, so I see him play. So
right, and one thing about Cass is he said he doesn't really have anything to lose. He said he's just going to try, and if he doesn't succeed, then he'll go work on the farm and make money that way.
He's country strong.
Oh yeah,
it's really hard to measure that, and kind of tie this whole conversation back together. 2013 draft that. The Chiefs took Eric Fisher, the top 5 of that draft, which was an awful draft, by the way. Eric Fisher, Luke Jokel, Deion Jordan, Lane Johnson, and Ezekiel Anza.
Well, I think the Chiefs got the good out of that litter.
Well, Lane Johnson's really good. He just keeps getting in trouble for the roiding up.
Yeah, well,
And then even after that, didn't get much better. Bartivius Mingos, Jonathan Cooper, Tavon Austin, D. Milner, Chance Warmack. I mean, it's not a very good draft. You don't get to a star player until you get to Sheldon Richardson at 13. He's had troubles too.
Yeah, I mean, and they're saying may not be, at least in terms of quarterbacks, this is not the draft. There's only one.
I'm just waiting for Cleveland to take Mitch Trubisky and just everybody laugh at him.
For Mitch Trubisky's sake, I hope he finds a place that he can sit behind and learn. Because even though he's not a polished player, and that's no knock to him. He's just not. He's his first year fully starting. How can you expect a guy that's started 1 year in college and go into the NFL with a bunch of grown men and try and comprehend a whole NFL offense?
Be our Aaron Rodgers, please.
Yeah,
no.
it's unreal. It's unreasonable.
I mean, he wasn't he dominated at North Carolina either. They were 8-5, lost to Georgia, Virginia Tech, Duke, North Carolina State, and Stanford. I mean, he wasn't. I don't know, he just wasn't overpowering anybody. I mean, they did have a good win over Florida State, so he does play in the ACC. So it's not like he's playing FCS or something like that, where you have to definitely judge for 1 year of starting, like they did with Wentz. But it's just interesting to see how top this draft's going to go. We'll have more of that coverage when it gets closer to the draft time here from X106. I'm not even sure when the draft is this year, like April or May. They always change it every year.
Well, they moved it back so they can get more money.
Yeah, first round will be April 27th, then April 28th and 29th for the rest of the draft for that second and third round on Friday, and then the rest of the draft on Saturday. I like how they mixed it up a little bit so you can people aren't just so emotional in the second round, so you actually have some good picks, hopefully in the second round.
Well, and I will say, I mean, we can even close this up with a quote unquote hot take, maybe a little lukewarm. But if you're gonna draft a quarterback, you wait till next year with Josh Allen from Wyoming. That guy.
Or Sam Darnold out of USC.
I'm taking Josh Allen.
I'm taking Darnold.
I'm taking Josh Allen right here. You heard it here first, folks.
There's
Josh
a lot of good quarterbacks coming back to the college football next year. You have the kid out of Penn State who balled out in the Rose Bowl. What was his name again? I don't remember. He was balling out.
He's a good player.
And
I do like Sam Darnold. But
guy at Oklahoma. I don't know if he's going to be a very good pro, but he's been balling out. I mean, there's going to be college football is going to be fun next year in Division I because there's so many quarterbacks coming back next year. It's going to be fun to watch. That's what makes football so much fun is when there's good quarterback play. Just makes it a little more interesting with good line play, of course.
Yeah, and when you have kids stay more than 1 year, college basketball.
That'll be a discussion for another day.
That's another topic for another day.
As that's been the X106 Podcast with Devin Albertson, Max Moore, and Jonathan Bynum. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a podcast. Of course, next week they'll have a different crew on this podcast. Follow us on Twitter at X106_sports for all updates regarding Bearcat Nation and across the sports world. This has been the X106 Sports Podcast.